You think the Febreze lab testers created this just for their scent machines, or because you can just quickly go, oh yes, I can definitely smell the berry and bramble here. You know, they hide the colors. They're just like the top of the top professionals for scent testing. I will say the design's pretty good. The vials are well designed to where I bet the CEO could just make an ultra vial of every single modern Febreze scent and go, ah yes, all of our products are 100% quality. Now put that on all our labels. I haven't seen that yet, but you know what? These have been good products. I'm not even sponsored. It's pretty efficient. You buy these, plug them in. The machines are pretty good scents. I was just like looking at it, I was like, it really is like a double nasal spray bottle. But it's a good design for what it is. So props to you, Febreze CEO. I'm sure you had some involvement. If not, if I just spoiled the top secret ultra scent vial, let's talk. You know, I can help with the reworks if needed, but it sounds like it's already doing pretty good there. I'm sure you've noticed that a lot of media, card games, TV shows, video games, a lot of them have elemental systems. You know, a lot of people talk about the TV show Avatar: The Last Airbender, and you know the 4 elements: fire, water, earth, wind. And oftentimes wind and air are interchangeable in names. You know, there's the earth, wind, and fire, the band, and it's when you look at the wide range of those elements, it tends to be, you know, those 4 are pretty big for covering things. And then, you know, recently on stream I talked about how good Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh were with staying consistent with their attributes. Magic has 5 elements, green, red, blue, black, white, which often depict, you know, green's like kind of like forest, red's like fire, blue's like water, black is like darkness, and white is light. And then Yu-Gi-Oh has wind, fire, earth, water, dark, light, and a 7th, which is divine, for the Egyptian god cards, which is really cool. They've stuck with that since the late 90s, early 2000s. Pokemon, I think, has actually mastered the element system, and honestly I think they are the apex of where all other future forms of media, again, whether it's games, shows, you know, literature, like I think Pokemon is the apex bar that's going to be compared to, because Pokemon hit a sweet spot of a pretty diverse array of elements, but not too widespread to where it gets overly complex. There's the ice type, but there's no like icicle, sleet, snow types, right? They're all, you know, it's ice, right? Because then, you know, we could talk about water. It's like, what, freshwater or saltwater type, which that would probably be more used as an ironic joke. But, you know, I mentioned Avatar, and another show, Shaolin Showdown, also did earth, wind, fire, water. And what I noticed about both those shows is how often they wanted to go into like subcategories of those elements. So in Avatar, there's earth bending, but then, you know, where, you know, characters move, manipulate the earth, stuff like that, earthquake powers. But then there's metal bending, which they have as a different form of earth bending. Fire bending has, you know, lightning bending, and then I know there's some of the water benders that can move plants around, I guess, because in the show they say they move the water in the plants, but it's basically plant bending. And what's funny is all 3 of those subtypes have their own types in Pokemon, which is steel, electric, and grass. And I think Pokemon just was ahead of the time. You know, in Gen 2 they added Dark and Steel type, and then in Gen 6 they added Fairy. And I think Gen 6 not only was really good for the video game in terms of having a good array of 18 types, but in the TCG, those types got put into 11 types in the TCG. And I was just talking about the other day how I think, yeah, Gen 6 TCG was amazing. There was 11 types, so really good set amount of variety. But not too specific, because I do think if you get way too specific in games, there becomes new challenges of the types start to get one for one identified with the only few characters in it. But because Pokemon has a lot of Pokemon per type, there's a lot of representation, a lot of like, playstyle diversity. My favorite type, Grass, you can have special attacking tanks like Venusaur, and then you can have, pretty fast sweepers, or pretty fast disruptive sweepers like, Skyform Shaman. Landform Shaman is more tanky. You could run Sceptile as like a speedy bruiser. There's all these different variations of Pokemon that share this element. And one thing I noticed is that, as a kid, I started a project of Nintendo trading card game. I'll never forget that. It was in late 5th grade. And, actually, I remember it was in, 6th grade I started, you know what? Yeah, so 6th grade is when I started putting them on card templates. But now that I'm looking back even more, that's right, I started like an MS Paint old version. I think the files are definitely saved. Of Nintendo trading card game, and this was definitely in 2006. And one thing that I did is I had my own array of elements, and it was 8, which was water, fire, earth, air, and then I had ice. I had ice, shadow, lightning, and grass or forest, and it kind of like I saw I saw the 4 elements in, shows like Avatar and Shaolin Showdown, which, by the way, Shaolin Showdown also did some subtyping. The main character, he had water as his element, but he also would go into like ice effects too. And so, with my elements, it's like I took that, added 4 more, and then it was only a little bit later down the road, after a few years, I was like, this is Nintendo trading card game. Nintendo owns Pokemon. I already have Pokemon characters in here, and I'm like, Pokemon really is the apex of diverse elements. Like, they've mastered it. And so I just incorporated the typing system, and it's a lot of fun. My mind I would love, and other people do this too, and it's really fun to see just overall, is take a game like Zelda, and then you start saying, what Pokemon types would they be? And that's kind of how the process would go. Like, the pose, okay, ghost type, right? Deku Scrubs would be grass types, Gorons would be rock types, Zoros would be water types. It's so much fun. You look at bosses like Volvagia in the Fire Temple, and he's a fire dragon type. King Dodongo, he's like rock dragon. It's a lot of fun, and that's kind of how my Nintendo TCG would go. Is I'm like, yeah, man, there's a lot. I think there's a lot of companies that wish they had the type arrangement that Pokemon does, and you can tell that while those aren't technically copywritten, I think a lot of those companies are like, if we do 18 elements just like Pokemon, we'll be seen as like a direct imitation, right? But they are killing it. It's so cool to see such a wide range of types. And Pokemon can be up to 2 types, which is really cool. And all these different type combinations. The fact that Venusaur is grass and poison, Palkia is water and dragon, Machamp is fighting. There's all these cool different ways that a Pokemon can be expressed by their elements. And I love that Pokemon has stuck around. Obviously, there needs to be some work on, I said last time about how Pokemon, is definitely half-baked in terms of the last 2 generations of versions. But the artists are still killing it. All the Pokemon designs have been good overall. The music's been good. Character designs overall been great. So I hope Game Freak understands that, there's definitely a standard that they should hold themselves to. Because not only is Pokemon, one of the biggest IP powerhouses in the world, but they do hold on to a concept of just mastering a range of elements. Again, it really hits that sweet spot of it's pretty diverse, but it's not overly complex to where you start subdividing like grass into specific flowers and trees. So it's definitely one of those things where Also, it benefits for the fact that there's nice, like a nice color arrangement. The fact that grass is affiliated with green, fire is red, water is blue. And in Pokemon's marketing, you see that with the cards. You see that just with the types themselves, the way they're laid out. It's really cool. I love those drawings people make of a bunch of Pokemon grouped together based off their type. And then there's also them being grouped together based off their color. And it just shows you how wide range of Pokemon there are in terms of designs and just color palettes in general. It's really cool, and you can see why it's so successful. And I think when you're designing a game, I look at like Elder Scrolls or Baldur's Gate 3 I recently played. And, they have their own forms of water, fire, lightning, and those are great overall. It is interesting when they start to stem into elemental systems, which is another thing Pokemon really mastered in the 90s. Is they really hunkered down on water super effective against fire, fire against grass, grass against water, and it's fun. It adds a new dynamic to Pokemon battles, and you definitely can see the influence in other games where elements interact with other elements, to the point that one of my favorite games, Metroid Prime Hunters, even had a little bit of that. If you use the Ice-based Judicator against Spire, it does more damage. The Magmol versus Noxus does more damage. And then Candon's Volt Driver against Weevil, Weevil's Battle Hammer against Candon. It was like a two Prime Hunter dynamic. Silex and Trace's weapons did more damage against each other. So, but they definitely were trying for something there, which was really cool. They didn't have to, and I like that they did some elemental system. That you also saw in the single player adventure, and I think obviously it can't be understated how much Pokemon has influenced the world, but there's just some nuances I think that doesn't get looked at as much, and I'm just so appreciative of the elemental system, and I think it's laid so much of an impact that now probably the next time you boot up Elder Scrolls 1 to 5, you probably will see after Pokemon came out, which is Morrowind on, there probably was a little bit of elemental influence in how those games played. That just shows how big of an impact Pokemon has, and it's awesome that not only is a Pokemon out there someone's favorite, but just by seeing the wide range of different type combinations and the way these Pokemon fight, whether it's Smogon singles or in the TCG, it's really cool, and I think it's a good form of human expression for us to show what Pokemon we like to use and how we fight with them. I love Mondays.